The White House imposes new sanctions against Iran as punishment for its recent ballistic missile test and its overall bad behavior in the region. The penalties targeting 13 people, a dozen companies.
They're not behaving.
We'll take up President Trump's response to Iran with Ambassador John Bolton. Also tonight, President Trump saving more taxpayer money. The president succeeded in getting the F-35 jet fighter cost below $100 million per plane.
Another great deal was reached with Lockheed Martin for the purchase of a new lot of F-35s, another big win.
We'll discuss the Trump economy with two former presidential candidates, Steve Forbes and Governor Mike Huckabee. How's he doing? And violent protests against free speech erupting at another liberal college campus. Police arresting 11 people who rioted over a planned speech by conservative actor and Vice Media co-founder Gavin McInnes. We take up here tonight what has become a national disgrace, our colleges and universities where there is no such thing as free speech if you are a conservative. Good evening, everybody. The Trump administration today imposing new economic sanctions against 13 Iranian citizens and 12 companies, freezing any property or money they may have under U.S. jurisdiction. This comes in response to the Islamic Republic's recent ballistic missile test that the White House says violates a UN Security Council resolution. National Security Advisor General Michael Flynn issued a statement on the new sanctions saying this, quote, "The international community has been too tolerant of Iran's bad behavior. The days of turning a blind eye to Iran's hostile and belligerent actions toward the United States and the world community are over." President Trump also weighed in and released this statement on Twitter. Iran is playing with fire. They don't appreciate how kind President Obama was to them. Not me. White House Press Secretary Sean Spicer today responded to a question about whether Mr. Trump would consider taking military action against Iran.
The president's been very clear. He doesn't take options off the table, but he understands the impact of something like that. The sanctions today, I think, are going to be very, very strong and impactful. And I hope that Iran realizes that after the provocative measures that they've taken, that they understand that this president, this administration is not going to sit back, take it lightly.
And the Navy has deployed the guided missile destroyer USS Cole. It's patrolling off the coast of Yemen in the wake of increasing tensions with Iran. It's, of course, symbolic that the USS Cole was deployed to patrol the waters off Yemen. It was attacked by al-Qaeda suicide bombers in the port of Aden in 2000, killing 17 of its sailors. President Trump today also addressed today's terrorist attack in Paris. French soldiers shot and critically wounded a man who shouted Allahu Akbar as he attacked them with 2 machetes at the Louvre. Trump reminded the United States not to forget about terrorism. The president tweeted this: "A new radical Islamic terrorist has just attacked in the Louvre Museum in Paris. Tourists were locked down. France on edge again. Get smart, U.S." Our first guest tonight is here to talk about the Iranian provocations and the Trump administration focus on radical Islamist terror. Joining us tonight, former U.S. Ambassador to the United Nations American Enterprise Institute Senior Fellow, Ambassador John Bolton. Ambassador, great to have you here. These sanctions against Iran, these seem like a restrained, measured response on the part of the administration. Do you think there is any chance the Iranians will pay attention?
No, look, I favor the sanctions, but nobody should have any illusion that they'll do the slightest to slow down either Iran's ballistic missile program or its nuclear program. When you name specific individuals and companies, simply new companies, new false fronts appear. Freezing assets in the United States, good God, if the Iranians have learned anything, once Obama unfroze all their assets, they're not going to leave anything here to freeze. What's most significant, I think, are the statements made by President Trump, National Security Advisor Flynn, Flynn yesterday saying this puts Iran on notice. Yeah. And I think what it puts them on notice about is that the Obama nuclear deal is about a heartbeat away from being ended. And the president himself saying he's not taking any options off the table. For the first time in 8 years, there's now a credible threat of military force. If Donald Trump's shown anything in the past 2 weeks, it's his credibility. And if there's the slightest chance that Iran will come to its senses, the credible threat of military force is the one thing that can focus their attention.
You know, it's interesting to watch this president operate. Because he has done what he said he would do, what he promised he would do in the campaign, and nearly all of it on domestic policy, on domestic issues. But as you move toward foreign policy, in this instance, for example, the Iranians have to be asking themselves, my God, he is doing what he said he would do. How do we put that into our calculus now? Because his predecessor was one of the most ambiguous and ambivalent figures in White House history.
Yeah, look, this is the end of 8 years where America's adversaries could size up the mark in the White House and take advantage of him. I think they're uncertain what Trump will do, and that's all to the good. As I say, I think there's very little in the economic sphere that will stop the Ayatollahs from the objective. Look, they've been pursuing for over 35 years to get deliverable nuclear weapons. And let's be clear, the ballistic missile test that prompted these sanctions was reported by the Pentagon to have failed when the re-entry vehicle failed. You don't need re-entry vehicles for weather or communication satellites. They're supposed to stay up there. Right. The re-entry vehicle is for the nuclear weapon. So there's no doubt what this ballistic missile program is all about, and we're on to them.
Yeah. And I want to turn to two other quick things very quickly, because the level of disrespect, insult that is rising in the national liberal media. We know that all of the owners of the national liberal media, they've had to receive their corporate orders. Because otherwise they would not be taking place. The pages of newspapers, whether it is the Washington Post, the New York Times, websites, whatever the media outlet. But now Der Spiegel and the Village offering up these headlines. There is Donald Trump on the cover of Der Spiegel with Lady Liberty's head in his right hand and a machete in the other. The Village saying, why not? This is a level of repugnance that it was not even, you couldn't have contemplated, you couldn't have conjured under President Obama or any preceding president. What in the world are we to do?
Well, look, it's out in the open now. That's the best thing. Honestly, they can't say they're unbiased anymore with these kinds of covers.
Yeah, we moved by bias quite convincingly.
Yeah, the Der Spiegel cover, you know, it's a cruel irony that on the very day that cover comes out in France, police and military at the Louvre, one of the West's most important museums, have had to defend innocent civilians against a guy shouting Allahu Akbar and wielding a knife. So, you know, if that's where the German media are going to focus their attention, this is just another problem for their government. And I think I think the people are going to speak in Germany as they did in this country, and the elite may not like it. But actually, you know, the people want their government to keep them safe from terrorist attack. Can you imagine that?
Yeah, it's incredible, isn't it? And the thing that's really incredible is we've had this president in office 2 weeks, and look at everything that he has accomplished. I want to turn to the United Nations very quickly, as this president has already been admonishing and indeed warning the United Nations about the relationship with the United States. Turns out in his last year in office, President Obama showered $9.2 billion on the United Nations. What in the world was he thinking?
Well, this is something I thought actually would be more typical of his first 8 years in office, but it just took the last one. I think the Trump administration should look for every possible way to rescind this money, if that's at all doable. And I think this is the sort of action that should prompt the kind of review overall of how the U.S. Spends money in the UN system. As I've said before, I'd move away from assessed contributions. I'd only pay for what we want and insist we get what we pay for. If you need any more evidence why that's necessary, Barack Obama just gave it to us as he went out the door.
And our president, President Trump, is demonstrating what respect for the taxpayers' money means in negotiating a new deal with Lockheed Martin on the F-35 jet fighters. Thank you so much, Ambassador. Great to have you with us.
Thank you.
John Bolton.